Good morning to all of you. So today we are going to start a new chapter, that is unconsciousness. I fully hope that all of you have taken care of unconscious patient in your clinical postings, maybe during BSc also, and you are also aware of what are the basic needs of unconscious patient, what may be the causes. So this class is basically a review of unconsciousness, which we already know from our BSc days. Now we'll start with definition of consciousness. Okay, we should understand what is consciousness so that we can understand what is unconsciousness in a better manner. Okay, so what is consciousness? It is a state of being conscious that is fully alert, aware, oriented and responsive to environment. Okay, first is conscious. We understand what is conscious. Okay, when we are conscious, we are fully alert. Okay, then we are aware of the surroundings. Aware of the surroundings means we know what is around us, who is standing, what is the date, all these things we already know. And we are oriented in terms of person, place and time. Oriented means we know who we are, where are we sitting, whether it is daytime or night time, all these things we already know. And we respond to the environment, and depending on the needs of the environment we respond to. If these things are present, then we are conscious. Okay, so this is the definition of consciousness. Now before we go into the unconsciousness, we will have a just recap of the parts of the brain. Okay, a very quick recap of parts of brain. Okay, so here what we see is the frontal lobe. Okay, this is the frontal lobe, this is the parietal lobe, this is the occipital lobe, this is the temporal lobe. Okay, so these are the four lobes which you can see in this picture. First is frontal, second is parietal. Parietal, we know that we have two parietal and one occipital, two temporal. So these are the different parts of the brain. And apart from that, we have two cortex. One is motor cortex, one is sensory cortex. Motor cortex is responsible for planning, controlling, and executing voluntary movements. Okay, motor cortex is responsible for planning, controlling and executing voluntary movements. For example, if I want to lift my hand, I need to plan to what extent I have to lift my hand, and how I have to lift my hand. Is it straight way or is it up? All these things need to plan. I need to execute whatever it is planned. So this type of any voluntary movement is planned by motor cortex. Okay, we have 5 sense organs. Okay, all these sense organs are managed by sensory cortex. Okay, so the sensory cortex is responsible for the sense organs, that is sight, taste, hearing, touch and smell. All these things are managed by sensory cortex. Okay, so motor cortex responsible for planning as well as executing voluntary movements. Okay, which is in our control. Okay, and sensory cortex is responsible for all our sense organs, inputs from all our sense organs. Then we have two areas. One is Broca's area, second is Wernicke's area. Broca's area is responsible for production of sound. Okay, Broca's area is responsible for production of sound. But for the development of a language, we need Wernicke's area. Okay, for development of language, we need the Wernicke's area. For example, comprehension, understanding the meaning, what is the meaning of spoken words, all these things are understood by Wernicke's area. So production of speech is the responsibility of Broca's area, but language development is the responsibility of Wernicke's area. Okay, then we have the brainstem. Brainstem consists of midbrain, pons and medulla oblongata. Okay, brainstem consists of midbrain, pons and medulla oblongata. So these are, and this is the cerebellum, which is present under the cerebrum. So this is the large cerebral hemisphere with some of the parts which you can see. Okay, so this was a short description of parts of brain. This is another diagram in which we have different areas, plus we have description of certain functions. Okay, we'll start with number one. Number one is cerebrum. Okay, so these cerebral hemispheres was what we studied in the earlier slide. So cerebrum is responsible for sensing, thinking, learning, emotion, consciousness, and voluntary movement. So these are all the function of the cerebrum, as well as the cerebral cortex. This we know is the cerebral cortex. Okay, next we have corpus callosum. Okay, so this area is called as corpus callosum. So corpus callosum, it is a bridge of fibers passing information between two cerebral hemisphere. Okay, so corpus callosum is the midpoint. So this acts as a bridge to pass information from one cerebral hemisphere to the other cerebral hemisphere. Okay, third is thalamus. So this is thalamus. Okay, it is a relay center of cortex and handles incoming and outgoing signals. Okay, so because the situation of thalamus is in such a way that it can it can handle the incoming as well as outgoing inputs, and at the same time this is a relay center from the information to pass from the thalamus to different areas. We shall be studying in the subsequent slide what is the importance of reticular formation, etc. Okay, so thalamus also plays an important role and acts as a relay system. Okay, next is hypothalamus. It is responsible for regulating temperature, hunger, thirst, and other biological needs. Okay, next is hippocampus. Okay, so this is hippocampus. So this hippocampus, it is a part of limbic system and it is involved in learning as well as memory. Okay, then we know we have a pituitary gland. Okay, so this pituitary gland is the master gland which regulates all other endocrine glands. And next the midbrain. Okay, and here we have the pons and here we have the medulla. So these three are the parts of brainstem. First is midbrain, second is pons, and next is the medulla. Okay, then can you see this blue color? So this is the reticular formation. It is a group of fibers which carry the stimulation needed to regulate sleep and arousal through the brainstem. My previous class was on sleep disorders. We were discussing about sleep and arousal. So this is a reticular formation which regulates the sleep as well as arousal, but this takes place through the brainstem. Okay, so brainstem, these are the three parts of brainstem is midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. So reticular formation, it is a group of fibers which carries these fibers through the brainstem. You can see this blue color which passes through all these three structures. Okay, and this helps us to regulate the sleep as well as wakefulness. Okay, then we have the spinal cord. Okay, spinal cord is responsible for transmission of information between brain and rest of the body, and they handle simple reflexes. We know that we have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So whatever information is there from the brain, it is passed to the periphery through the spinal nerves. Same way, if any information need to come from the periphery to the brain, it has to travel through the spinal nerves and finally it will come to the brain. Okay, so spinal cord are responsible, 31 pairs of spinal cord are responsible to transmit as well as relay information from the brain to the body and vice versa. Okay, brainstem we have already studied. Next is cerebellum. So this part is cerebellum, which is under this cerebral hemisphere. So this coordinates muscle movement as well as balance. Okay, then amygdala. So it is a part of limbic system which is involved in emotion and aggression. Okay, so this was all about different parts of brain with their respective functions. Okay, depending on the insult, or maybe depending on the injury which is presented. Suppose if you have a patient of head injury, the sinus symptoms will be depicted, or sinus symptoms will depend on which part of the brain is affected. Depending on the affected part, you will have the different sinus symptoms. So that is why the knowledge of this diagram is very important to understand what are the possible exhibition of sinus symptoms. Now, what is the meaning of consciousness? It is a state which has three important aspects. First is the person is wakeful. Second is awareness of self, and third is awareness of environment and time. Okay, wakefulness, the patient is awake. That is wakefulness. What is awareness of self? That is, the person knows the own character, feelings, motives, desire. So the person, I know who I am. I know what is my desire. I know what is my individuality. All these things I know. So that is awareness of self. And awareness of environment and time. I know where I am sitting, who is surrounding me, what things are there, what time it is, which month it is, everything I know. So if these things are there, then these are the important aspects of three important aspects of consciousness. It is wakefulness, awareness of self, and awareness of environment and time. Now we'll come to a basic topic, that is unconsciousness. Okay, so it is a partial or complete loss of consciousness with interruption of awareness of oneself and one's surrounding. Okay, can you see this? This person is unconscious. So this unconsciousness can be partial or complete. Partial means sometimes the patient may have a brief episode. We sometimes use the word fainting. Brief episode of unconsciousness, then the person becomes all right. Okay, so this can be partial to some extent. The person will be, we shall be studying what are the different degrees of unconsciousness. So in that way it can be partial, or it can be complete loss. Even if you give deep painful stimuli, the person will not be able to respond. So when first is there is partial or a complete loss of consciousness. Second is there will be interruption of awareness of oneself and one's surrounding. So this patient doesn't remember or doesn't know, because she is unconscious. She doesn't know who she is, where she is lying, what happened. She doesn't know anything. She is also not aware of the surroundings. She is not aware that she is lying on the road. Somebody is coming to help. Somebody is counting her pulse. All these things she does not know. So that is the definition of unconsciousness, which can be partial or complete, and there will be interruption in identification of one's own self, that is awareness of self, and also there will be interruption in awareness of the surroundings. Okay, so that is the definition of unconsciousness. And now the most important part, reticular activating system. Okay, so reticular activating system, or RAS, is a piece of brain that starts close to the top of spinal cord and extend upwards around 2 inches. Okay, so where is it present? It is present on the top of the spinal column. Okay, it is a piece of brain that starts close to the top of spinal column, and it is 2 inches, extend upwards to 2 inches. Okay, and what is the diameter? It is slightly larger than a pencil. Okay, now all our senses are wired directly to this bundle of neurons that is about the size of a little finger. So reticular activating system is not a very big area. It is very small, but at the same time it is very important. Okay, so all our senses, so what they do is they pass through this bundle of neurons, and this bundle of neurons is only the size of a little finger. And where is it present? It is present at the end of the spinal cord and starting point of the brain. Okay, so this acts as a filter or a nightclub bouncer. Nightclub bouncer is a what we call is a special type of security guard. Okay, so this helps. This is a filter that works for a brain. And how does it work for a brain? This is the role. While it may be fairly small part of the brain, it is very important. It is a great keeper of information that is let into the conscious mind, and it makes sure that the brain doesn't have to deal with more information that it can handle. So what is the role of gatekeeper? You must have seen in important offices the gatekeeper, or if you have if you have gone to bank in COVID situation. What does the gatekeeper do? The gatekeeper ensures that suppose if 10 people are allowed to go inside the bank, the gatekeeper will ensure that only 10 people are there. So when 2 people come out, then only he will allow 2 people to come in. So that is the role of gatekeeper, that overcrowding of people inside the bank will be prevented. So that is same role which is done by a RAS or reticular activating system. Even though it is the size of a little finger, but all our senses are passing through this reticular activating system, and it ensures that brain is not overcrowded by many things. It will send only those information which can be handled by our brain. Okay, so this reticular activating system plays a big role in sensory information you perceive daily. Okay, for example, if you see out, you will see many things, but we don't keep a detail of all the things what we see. We only focus on few things. Okay, so this is why, because our reticular activating system is functioning. Now to produce, if somebody is unconscious, what should take place? It should disrupt the ascending RAS, that is RAS, and extend the length of brainstem and up to the thalamus. Okay, reticular activity system is here. Okay, at the end of the spinal cord, and this disrupt the ascending reticular activating system. Okay, this brainstem may be affected and the thalamus also may be affected. Then unconsciousness will be there, or this may be disrupting the function of both cerebral hemisphere. Okay, we have two cerebral hemisphere. So this in unconsciousness, the function of both cerebral hemisphere will be lost. Third is metabolically, there is depression of all brain functions. So this occurs in drug overdose. Okay, so this occurs in drug overdose, where there is a depression of all the brain functions. Okay, so if these things are there, this will produce unconsciousness. So here we have studied what is the importance of reticular activating system, where is it, what is its role, what does it do, all these things we have studied, and this slide explains that to produce unconsciousness, the reticular activating system has to be disrupted, the brainstem as well as thalamus has to be disrupted, then the function of both cerebral hemispheres will be lost, and in drug overdose there will be depression of all brain functions. Okay, now meaning of unconsciousness, it is a state of depressed cerebral function. Now we have understood what it is, that result in impairment of response to sensory stimuli, abnormal loss of awareness of self and surroundings. See, it is just the opposite of consciousness, where we are there is impairment in response to sensory stimuli. We have 5 senses, and there will be impairment in one or more senses. Second is we are not aware to self, and also we are not aware to surroundings. Now the onset of unconsciousness may be sudden or it may be gradual. Okay, now what are the levels of unconsciousness? Excitatory unconsciousness, stuporous, fainting, somnolent, coma, and vegetative state. We will study what it is. Okay, now what is excitatory unconsciousness? The patient does not respond coherently, but is disturbed by sensory stimuli such as bright light and noise. Okay, if we ask the name, the patient may not be able to tell the correct name, or he may be confused about it. And second thing is, he is disturbed by, suppose if you switch on the torch and put the beam, focus the beam on his face, the person will be disturbed, or if there is a sudden noise, he will be disturbed. Okay, so that is called as excitatory unconsciousness, where the patient is responding, but the patient is not responding coherently. Okay, what is stupor? The patient responds to external stimuli and shows the symptoms of annoyance when stimulated by pinprick, loud noise, such as clapping of hands. Okay, the patient gets annoyed. The patient responds to external stimuli. Okay, so external stimuli can be noise, can be voice, or it can be touch. In any external stimuli, the patient will be responding, but the patient gets annoyed when the patient is stimulated by pinprick or maybe a loud noise. Third is fainting. Okay, there is momentary fainting. We already will know very commonly, because it's a very common thing to occur. So it is a momentary loss of consciousness, and the patient recovers as soon as, suppose if it is very hot summer, if you are exposed to very hot summer, you have fainting attacks. So once you get a colder atmosphere, you become conscious, and even if you don't get a colder atmosphere, after a few seconds or maybe minutes, you become alright again. So that is recovering spontaneously, and this is for a very short duration. Some moments. Now, what is somnolent? It is a stage between sleeping and awaking. It's very difficult to identify whether the patient is drowsy or the patient is sleepy, or what we call is a stage between a stage between wakefulness and sleeping. Now, what is coma? It is a clinical state of unconsciousness in which the patient is unaware of himself. Can you see this patient? Even with deep painful stimuli, there is no arousal at all. So this stage is a state of coma. Okay. Now, what is vegetative state? There is clinical condition of complete unawareness, and there is damage to CNS, and there is no chance to recover back. Okay. But in coma, the patient may come back. But in vegetative state, the patient may continue for a very long time, something for years. Okay. So this vegetative state, there is damage to the CNS, but the vital functions, the heart rate, the respiratory rate, the renal functions, they continue to take place normally, but the patient will be deeply will be in the vegetative state with his vitals stable, but he will be completely unaware of self as well as the environment, and there is no chance to recover back. Okay. Now, what is the etiology of unconsciousness? Okay. Unconsciousness is generally caused by temporary or permanent impairment of either reticular activating system, brainstem, maybe of cerebral hemisphere, or a bilateral thalamus. Okay. Or we have studied that if unconsciousness has to occur, so these are the areas which are affected areas. Maybe reticular activating system in the brain, maybe both cerebral hemisphere, or maybe the thalamus. Okay. So we have different types of causes. One is structural causes. So these causes either destroy an area or exert indirect damage by way of compression or increased intracranial pressure. What do you mean by this? According to this, either the basic area is damaged, or there is involvement of some other area where, suppose if you have a space occupying tumor or space occupying lesion, which we call as SOL. So depending on how big the tumor is, this will press the nearby organ. So it can be due to that. Okay. Either the basic part is damaged, or it is being pressed by the nearby things, maybe due to tumor, maybe collection of blood, maybe suppose the patient is having a head injury where he has a big clot, and because of the clot in one side, the brain is being shifted to the other side. So these are all structural causes. Okay. So causes can be stroke, can be traumatic brain injury, which is TBI. It can be intracranial, epidural, or subdural hemorrhage. Okay. This maybe inside the cranium, or it can be epidural or subdural. Okay. Or it can be some intracranial space occupying tumors. It can be inflammatory changes which can occur in encephalitis or maybe meningitis, or it can be venous thrombosis, or it can be acute hydrocephalus. Okay. So these are the different structural causes. Okay. Next is some metabolic causes. These metabolic causes, they impair the cerebrum. हाँ, शक्कर को बाजू वाले डिब्बे में ऊपर वाला. हाँ. So they impair the cerebrum and arousal function by decreasing blood supply of oxygen and allowing the waste to accumulate. Okay. So what is the role of metabolic causes? The metabolic causes, what they do is they impair the cerebrum and the arousal functions. Okay. And what do? They decrease the supply of oxygen, and they allow the accumulation of waste. So this is common in hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, hyponatremia, hypo and hypernatremia, hypercalcemia, seizures, etc. These are the metabolic causes of unconsciousness. Third is psychiatric causes. Okay, we have different psychiatric causes. The patient looks comatose, but awareness is usually intact. Okay, if you see the patient, we feel as if the patient is comatose, but awareness is intact. So this occurs in catatonia, severe depression, and conversion disorder. So what is catatonia? Okay, catatonia, there is abnormality of behavior as well as movement. In catatonia, there is abnormality in movement as well as there is abnormality in behavior. Severe depression, we already know. Okay, the patient is so depressed, patient doesn't get up, the patient will always be sleeping continuously. You must have come across severe depression patient in psychiatric ward. Next is the conversion disorder. Okay, so in what is conversion disorder? It is a disorder in which the person experiences blindness, paralysis, and other symptoms related to the nervous system which cannot be explained by physical illness. Okay, we have just now listed out what are the structural causes and what are the metabolic causes. If there is a conversion disorder, the patient may have neurological symptoms. The patient may have neurological symptoms. The patient may experience blindness, or he may be experiencing paralysis or any other neurological deficits, but you cannot pinpoint the metabolic as well as structural causes for it. So that is called as conversion disorder. Okay, so that is called as conversion disorder. Now this is just to remember. Okay, A, E, I, O, U is vowels. We know that in English alphabet we have A, E, I, O, U, and this is tips. Just to remember the causes, this is a good thing. Okay, A stands for alcohol, acidosis, ammonia, and arrhythmias. Okay, so unconsciousness can be caused by alcohol. It also can be caused by acidosis, which comes under metabolic disorders. It can be caused by ammonia, which occurs in hepatic encephalopathy, and arrhythmias in any cardiac cause. Okay, if you remember ventricular trigeminy, ventricular bigeminy. Okay, then ECG looks like a scribbling in the wall where you have ventricular tachycardia, all these things. So this causes unconsciousness. Okay, E stands for endocrine causes. The electrolytes may be high, may be low. We have just studied in metabolic causes. It can be unconsciousness can cause in hypernatremia and hyponatremia. It can also cause in glycemia and hypoglycemia. So that these are all electrolytes. And encephalopathy also causes unconsciousness. I stands for infections. Okay, so infections also can cause unconsciousness, especially if it is sepsis. Okay, next is oxygen. Less amount of oxygen in the brain can cause unconsciousness. Drug overdose can unconsciousness. Opiates overdose also can cause unconsciousness. U stands for uremia. You must have come across patients with chronic renal failure where they have uremia and they are unconscious. Okay, so uremia also causes unconsciousness. T stands for trauma. Temperature issues can be hyper or hypothermia, and there is a type of unconsciousness which causes in vitamin B1, that is thiamine deficiency, that is Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome is there due to vitamin B1 or thiamine deficiency. I stands for insulin, that is hypo or hyperglycemia can be the reason. P stands for poisoning, all medications. Okay, and also psychiatric issues. We have just listed out of the list psychiatric issues like catatonia or maybe a severe depression can cause, or conversion reaction can cause unconsciousness. S stands for stroke, for seizures. Okay, or in the post-ictal state. If you have come across patients with seizures, we have pre-ictal, ictal as well as post-ictal state. In post-ictal stage, the patient will be in a case of flaccid state, and the patient will be unconscious for a few minutes. Okay, so that is in post-ictal state. Syncope is fainting attacks due to different reasons. Then space SOL, that is space occupying lesions, especially in the brain, can cause unconsciousness. Then is VP shunt. We know that in hydrocephalus we manage the patient with ventricular peritoneal shunt. If that is not functioning properly, so what does it do? It will cause acute hydrocephalus. Okay, so in acute hydrocephalus the patient can be unconscious. So just to remember this AEIOU tips, and this is the pneumatics, and based on this you can study. Okay, now this, what is the pathophysiology? Okay, pathophysiology. Consciousness is a complex function controlled by reticular activating system. Okay, consciousness is a complex function which is controlled by reticulating activating system. Okay, so it begins in medulla as a reticular formation. I had shown you the previous slide that blue color. So it begins in the medulla. Okay, medulla oblongata, and this continues through pons. It reaches the midbrain. Okay, so it begins in the medulla oblongata. Then reticular formation connects to reticular activating system, which is located in the midbrain. Then it connects to hypothalamus as well as thalamus. So this is how it is connected. So this RAS begins in the medulla, and this beginning is like a reticular formation. Then it is present in the midbrain. It is connected to hypothalamus as well as thalamus. Okay, so integrated pathway connects to the cortex via the thalamus and to the limbic system via the hypothalamus. Okay, so there are two things. This reticular activating system is connected to thalamus. It is connected to cortex, cerebral cortex via the thalamus, and to the limbic system via the hypothalamus. Okay, so this reticular activating system has connection both with cerebral cortex as well as the limbic system. To the cerebral cortex, connection to the cerebral cortex is to the thalamus, and connection to the limbic system is to the hypothalamus. Okay, so this is what we were studying. Okay, so these are somatic sensory impulses. Okay, so first is nociceptors. Nociceptors are pain receptors. Okay, so this is one of the somatic nursing. Then second is proprioceptors. What are proprioceptors? Proprioceptors are sensory receptors related to movement as well as position. Related to movement and position. Okay, so this is the sensory impulses. Okay, so these are the sensory impulses which are coming from the spinal cord. This is the medulla oblongata, where the reticular activating system starts. Okay, and finally this is present in the midbrain, and it is connected to the cerebral cortex through the thalamus and to the limbic system that is not projected here, and to the limbus system through the hypothalamus. Okay, so this is how the reticular activating systems are there. Okay, have you understood? See, these impulses may be pain receptors, which are called as nociceptors. This may be related to maybe position, as well as it can be due to position, or it can be related to the movement. Okay, so when these impulses from the spinal cord are reaching the brain, it reaches the medulla oblongata, where reticular formation starts. So it reaches the medulla oblongata, and finally this reaches the midbrain, and from the midbrain it is connected to thalamus as well as hypothalamus. Okay, from the connection of hypothalamus, the cerebral hemisphere, they get the information, and to the limbic system they get the information from the hypothalamus. So this is how reticular activating system works. So reticular formation produces wakefulness. Okay, whereas RAS is responsible for awareness of self and environment. Okay, so these are the 3 points which are present in consciousness. First is the person has to be awake. Second is the person has to be should have responsible awareness of self as well as awareness of environment. So wakefulness is responsibility of reticular formation, which starts at medulla oblongata, continues to pons, and at the level of midbrain, this becomes reticular activating system. So this reticular activating system is responsible for awareness of self and environment. Okay. So if any disorder which affects any part of RAS, this produces coma. Okay, and to produce coma, the cerebral hemispheres as well as the brainstem has to be affected. Okay, to produce coma, the disorder must affect both cerebral hemisphere as well as brainstem. Now this is the pathophysiology: direct compression in the brainstem. Okay, suppose if you have an increased intracranial pressure, maybe a blood clot, anything, direct compression. Okay, so this causes hypoxia. Hypoxia causes ischemia, and the chemicals which are needed to carry out the brain function is not formed, and the patient goes into coma. This also can cause, maybe directly, it can cause direct coma, or it also can cause through toxic waste from liver as well as kidney. Chronic renal failure we studied in the IEOU slide, uremia. Okay, uremia causes unconsciousness, or maybe hepatoencephalopathy. Okay, so this also causes where there is increase in ammonia. Okay, so there also patient goes into coma. Okay, so this is the pathophysiology. Coma is caused maybe due to toxic waste, maybe due to direct compression of brainstem, or due to direct compression hypoxia which causes ischemia, and whatever the chemicals which are needed to carry out the vein functions, they are not formed. Now these are the clinical manifestations. Okay, so this clinical manifestation is we had just discussed in etiology. We have two groups: one is metabolic causes and second is structural causes. Okay, so sign and symptoms depend on whether it is metabolic causes or whether it is structural causes. In history, there will be behavioral changes in metabolic disorders, but in structural induced, there will be local seizures and there will be headache. Local seizures means in some affected part only seizure will be there, other areas will not be having. Okay, so that is local seizures, and the patient will complain of headache. Typical problem, because it is metabolically induced, so problems can be diabetic ketoacidosis, or it can be a hepatic coma. In structure, it can be tumor, it can be a hemorrhage. Third is the pupillary reaction. Okay, no issues in pupillary reaction, but in structurally induced, you will find there is unequal reaction. There will be unequal reaction in both eyes. Next is pupillary size. First is pupillary reaction, next is pupillary size. In metabolic induced, it will be in mid position and fixed. Okay, and here it will be pinpoint. Okay, there will be pinpoint fixed pinpoint pupils and mid position and fixed pupils in pupillary size. Corneal reflex will be present in metabolic induced but will be absent in structurally induced. Extraocular movement, there will be doll's eye will be absent in metabolic induced, and gaze paralysis. Gaze paralysis means the patient may be gazing to any of the side, and there that gaze remains. The patient is not able to shift his gaze. So that is called as gaze paralysis. Next is extremity movement. The patient is able to move both his limbs, but in structurally induced, there will be weakness in the limbs. Okay. Next is reflexes. Reflexes may be present in metabolic induced and will be unequal in structural induced. Will be unequal. Okay. The reflexes will be unequal. In one limb you may have some reflexes, but the other limb will not be showing those reflexes. Okay. So these are the unequal reflexes. Okay, and response to pain will be equal in all the limbs, in both the limbs, but in structurally induced this will be unequal depending on the affected part. So these are the clinical manifestation based on whether it is metabolically induced or structurally induced. Okay, now we'll study some diagnostic tests. Now diagnostic test is, first is X-ray. Then MRI, that is magnetic resonance imaging. So this will help us to identify if some tumor is there, if some bleeding is there, intracranial hemorrhage is there. MRI will help us to know all these things. Okay, and in CT scan we can find out, or we can diagnose cerebral edema, infarctions in the brain, hydrocephalus, and if there is a midline shift. Okay, all these things can be diagnosed by CT scan. Okay, and lumbar puncture will help us. Infections also can be caused, can be one of the causes. So if it is a case of encephalitis or meningitis, then a lumbar puncture has to be done. Okay, so lumbar puncture help us to identify cerebral meningitis, and we can have a cerebral evaluation. And this is how between L3 and L4 the person's space is identified, a needle is inserted, and cerebral spinal fluid, it is taken out for examination. Okay, so these are the diagnostic tests. It is continued. Then is PET, positron emission tomography. So this is a test which is beyond a CT scan as well as MRI. So positron emission tomography, as I had taken earlier, so this is a whole body examination where we are able to identify changes even at cellular level. So that important is PET. Okay, so that is one of the tests. Next is, if we are interested to know the electrical activity of cerebral cortex, EEG has to be done. Then blood tests like CBC, RFT, LFT, ABG, all these things we need to do. Then depending on whatever the other signs and symptoms are there, you will have other imaging technique and different neurological and behavior disorders. Okay, so these are the diagnostic tests. Now, what are the complications of immobility? The complications of immobility are, first is skin. There is chances of pressure sore. There is chances for laceration. If we don't change the position, this is what, and pressure sores. I will be showing a big pressure sore in one of my subsequent slides. Pressure sore and laceration can occur due in the skin. Second is respiratory. Because the patient is not moving about, there can be hypostatic pneumonia, there can be pulmonary embolism. Okay, next is CV complications. CV complications is cardiovascular complications. First is DVT, deep vein thrombosis, postural hypotension, and thromboembolism. So these are the problems with deep vein thrombosis, with cardiovascular complications. If the patient is unconscious. In GI system, there will be paralytic ileus, constipation, there will be distension of abdomen can be there. In urological, there can be urinary tract infection, and because of the stasis of urine, there can be stone formation. In musculoskeletal, there is a risk of contracture and osteoporosis, dystrophy, and weakness. So these are the different signs and symptoms. Then in neurological, you will see that the patient has foot drop, and in psychological, the patient will be having anxiety as well as depression. So these are the complications of immobility. Okay, so now I will be stopping this, and in the next class we are going to study the management part. What is the medical management? What is the nursing management? Nursing management is divided into emergency management and routine management, and what is the prognosis. All these things we shall be studying in the next class. Thank you for your patient listening. Thank you.